Marshall Plan. The Marshall Plan created a framework to reinvigorate the European and world economy. It did that by giving monetary aid to the war-ravaged countries of World War II. The U.S. government decided that the European economic tailspin required outside aid to be stopped. So the Marshall Plan was created by the Secretary of State, George Marshall.
Truman Doctrine. In 1947, the Truman Doctrine was issued in an attempt to combat the Soviet menace. The policy called for money to be transferred to the Third World nations such as Greece and Turkey in an attempt to prevent communist expansion and gain allies in the battle against communism. The Truman Doctrine was synonymous with the Marshall Plan, launched the same year.
The nuclear arms race was a period of extreme tension between the Soviet Union and the United States. This was a main cause of the Cold War. Both sides thought the other was building nuclear weapons, which led to the large stockpiling of nuclear arsenals. This led to proxy wars in many places, including the Middle East, Korea, and Vietnam, where the conventional weapons were against one another. A proxy war is a conflict between third parties fighting on behalf of more powerful parties. During the Cold War, these were extremely common because the U.S. and Soviets did not want to fight each other directly because of the risk of a nuclear war. The Iron Curtain was a group of communist countries that came around in Eastern Europe after World War II. Soviet-supported communist governments created countries such as East Germany, Poland, Romania, and others. People in these countries lived behind the Iron Curtain because there was a barrier between communist states and democracy freedom.
The Berlin Airlift. The Western Allies organized the Berlin Airlift to carry supplies to the people in West Berlin. Aircrews from the United States Air Force, the British Royal Air Force, the Canadian Royal Air Force, the Royal Australian Air Force, the Royal New Zealand Air Force, and the South African Air Force flew over 200,000 flights in 1 year, providing up to 4,700 tons of necessities daily, such as fuel and food, to Berlin.
The Berlin Wall. The communist government of the German Democratic Republic on August 13th of 1961 began to build a barbed wire and concrete wall between East and West Berlin. Its purpose was to keep the Western fascists from entering East Germany and undermining the socialist state. The wall stood until November 9th of 1989. Space race. This was the race between the two Cold War rivals, the Soviet Union and the United States, to put man on the moon.
In 1962, the Soviet Union sent a ton of missiles and mobile launch vehicles that could carry nuclear warheads to the new communist Caribbean nation called Cuba. The U.S., who secretly funded a ploy to go against Fidel Castro's government the year before, threatened to invade Cuba when it learned about this shipment. The U.S. had fears a nuclear holocaust was soon to occur. The Soviets eventually agreed to remove the missiles from Cuba once the U.S. removed theirs from Turkey.
The Vietnam War. American involvement in the Vietnam War ranged from 1950 to 1975, following the Second World War. The United States decided to support the division of the Vietnam at the 17th parallel. Both Kennedy and Johnson attempted to win the war in Vietnam by enlarging the effort through the Strategic Hamlet Program. An influx of advisors, a massive air campaign known as Operation Rolling Thunder, and the introduction of ground forces, respectively. The Tet Offensive of 1968 proved to be the breaking point for the United States as the American public caught a glimpse of a failing effort. By the end of 1968, the United States was looking to honorably end the war in Vietnam. Eventually, the United States and North Vietnam entered into the Paris Peace Accords, which officially ended American involvement in the war. Without the assistance of the United States, South Vietnam capitulated under the pressure of North Vietnamese and Viet Congo on April 30th, 1975. The North Vietnamese achieved victory, and the war in Vietnam was officially finished.
Oh, he's stolen.
I build a snowman. It doesn't have to be a snowman.